Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. In today's show, Future Friday, we're going to talk about Moon as a long-term vault. So let's dive deep into it. Now there is a lot of excitement now specifically for me because I am an Indian and India just became the fourth nation to land on Moon. This happened basically yesterday evening. And space is hot again basically. A lot of people are pouring money into it and there's a lot of interest with some deep pocket involved into this. There are three long-term players. There is a reason why I'm only counting three: European Union, USA and India. Three long-term players which have like long-term sustainability to do it. And on top of that, that's more or less exactly how it was basically back in the days. However, what has changed is private player has entered the chat, so to say. So what does that mean? That simply means at this point in time, we no longer need the money that we needed for these sort of missions. These sort of mission required money like there is no tomorrow, like a blank check, so to say. But private players, they work for profit based, meaning they would need some seed funding, but if things go well enough, they could be like, hey, we started with some seed funding, now we are cash positive. They can actually make money while doing things. So that's awesome. That means technology has reached a good maturity point. That's awesome. And at this point in time, as in 2023, all of humanity, like genuinely, all of humanity needs hope. Like I have seen so many people, specifically kids, that what scares me is that they will talk about problems as if like they are unsolvable. I'm like, bro, we are humans, we good, we strong, we capable. There is no scenario where it's like, oh, something will happen and we will not able to solve it. Like that just does not happen. A man can die, mankind cannot. That's a known thing. Of course, eventually, thousands and millions of years that could happen, but not anytime soon. And if we have this attitude of like a defeatist attitude or anti-human attitude that I'm seeing way too much, then we are like, no, then we are gone. So we need hope. Now, how the heck back in the days hopes were created? For example, when Yuri Gagarin landed, it rejuvenated USSR. USSR was very poor, like fundamentally they were poor. But even in that state, everybody for that brief moment, for that event basically, they got together, they enjoyed it, and country's output increased. Like it was a known, observed fact that like that was actually beneficial. Like the whole nation got like a boost, so to say. And we don't even need to go into detail of Apollo missions. When this happened, like where do you think USA got so many companies? Where all this magic technology came from? Apollo. So all the money they poured into it, it got multiplied exponentially. So it was like free from US's point of view. So this shows us that if you want your nations to grow, you have to give them an ideal. You have to give them something hopeful. Something was like, oh, that's awesome. And for India, people are like, oh, India has this. Like, first of all, I'm genuinely shocked how the heck so many Western media, like I have seen good coverage, that's awesome. But I've seen some coverage that was like, are you serious? Like, do you need your brain checked? It's like they do not understand math or people. People do not run on photosynthesis or water. If India have starving people, our population would be small. It's not small. It's 1.5 billion almost. We have food. Of course, not everybody is rich, but same applies in USA, same applies in UK. All of them have a homeless crisis. So how the heck it's like, oh, like India should have this? It's like you also have that issue. We'll always have this issue. And for India, it's very important to solve this, create hope. The reason for that is so we can stop brain drain. Like we need to show smart people in India. It's like, hey, you can go abroad, you can be the CEO of almost Fortune 500, or you can just like, stay here and still do amazing things. Like, Apollo, why go to them? We try to build our own. Now, like it's a much smaller thing. Again, that's how it starts. You build it brick by brick, day by day. So we need hope. And whole of the world needs it right now. So there is a lot of excitement, and I am reasonably sure most of you do understand this, that we need hope, like flat out. There is no two way around it. It's like global warming is a child's problem to solve. We know how to solve it. Heck, we have started to solve it in small scales, but everybody talks about it as like, what the heck we gonna do? It's like, dude, study math. So we come to the money part of things. Back in the days of Apollo and Yuri Gagarin, you have to understand, they got blank checks, meaning the team, the factories, the companies, everything, they got a blank check, meaning get this done, don't worry about the money. They did that. And that was what we classify as the war driver, meaning if you have war, basically Cold War in that era, money was like, don't ask about it. Just, there is an old saying, it's like if you have to ask the price, you can't afford it. It was something like that. However, that has faded. And I love the fact that Neil deGrasse Tyson always jokes about this exact fact. Is like, if America really needs to ever needs to go to Mars, somebody in America needs to go to China and trick Chinese people on saying that they're gonna go to Mars. 5 minutes later, we will be on Mars. So again, but that's no longer the case. There is no war oomph that we used to have. So that part is gone. It did got us, like, step one, but it's no longer there. However, there is one big money chunk. That big money chunk is coming from space tourism. For example, that puppy. Now, when you are talking about billionaires, nowadays billionaires can grow big enough where they can actually fund something significant. And if you have few billionaires acting together, yeah, we good, bro, we good. We can get stuff done. I would not be shocked if somebody will literally decide to make an airlines company and successfully make it. That would be possible nowadays. So that matters. Now, space tourism is only way of long-term, money influx. Tourism recently years have reached a saturation point where it's like, yeah, tourism is good and all that, but it's reaching a point where it's like, yeah, everybody sees every other place. So it's like, yeah, but space, that's completely untapped, completely new. So lot of money to be had yet. So a lot of money there. On top of that, we spent boatload of money in archiving, and I mean every nation. I mean, this is India's archive, National Archive of India. This puppy is older than India's independence, so to say. We did not destroy it. That was very wise of us. It's very old and important. This is United States of America. This is UK's. And again, these buildings are just symbolic. They are generally running an organization which generally have either one master building or multiple buildings where they are doing archiving. And everybody spends money on archiving, be it archiving movies, be it archiving court documents, be it archiving laws, legislation, everything they can archive, they do archive. And I'm not joking, like, if there are freaking archives of record desk, there is archives of magazines, every newspapers. Like, we spent boatload of money worldwide. I mean, even North Korea spends money on it to, like, literally do archiving. Like, archiving is a surprisingly deep industry, like surprisingly deep. Like, we pour money into it like there is no tomorrow. And we need something that is long-term stable. These things, they're good, but they are very short-term stable, meaning barely 100 to 200 years. But we need something that is at least hopefully can touch 1000. Thankfully, Moon does possess that technology. That it, now be mindful, nothing ever can be made as like, no, nothing will happen to 1000 years. That's not possible. However, you can reduce the things that could happen exponentially, where it's like likelihood of this surviving is so high where it's like good enough. And of course, redundancy. We are doing it on Earth. What if we do some extra on Moon? Then we'll like absolutely sorted. Then it will be like, what if we do some extra on Mars also? Then we'll be like, bro, we good. Unless sun goes boom, we good. So that's the money part of it. We spend money on archiving, we spend money on tourism. These things combined can actually create enough of a backbone where it's like, some money can be spent on lunar archiving. So how do we start? Well, data is the first thing. We need to back up data. Now, how the heck humans as a species became so powerful compared to billions and trillions of species that came before us and millions of species that are active right now? How the heck that happened? Well, simply because we figured out how to beat time. We started to create knowledge. Well, that's a basic thing. Every creature can create that. We started to transfer it through time, meaning I can learn what my forefather learned, and I can learn what his forefather did. We can keep going back. Like, you can keep going back to Einstein, so you can understand how his mathematics worked. You can keep going even further, where you can go back to Newton, or the beginning of civilization, stories, their faith, their language, everything. That's why we are so powerful at this point in time. Knowledge is the most valuable asset at this point in time to all of us. Like, what is the most precious thing to humanity? It's knowledge. Not gold, not hulululu, not jingalala. It's knowledge. Without knowledge, none of the damn thing has any value. This is also another thing that I find funny, is like a post-apocalyptic world and people are like, gold is valuable. I'm like, what are you gonna do with gold? Like, what is more valuable in post-apocalyptic, a working RO plant or gold? So it's one of those things. Knowledge is far more valuable, and we must not lose it to time. We have learned this the hard way. Back in the eras of kings and queens and emperors and conquerors, we have learned it. Like, most of the time, they will try to destroy everything, and they themselves will struggle afterwards. We have learned it the hard way, that thou shall not erase history. Many times we have tried it, and it only backfired. So thou shall not. Like, if you have watched the movie 300, I know it was a LOL system, but in that movie, it's like all the mention of that Sparta will be erased from history. Yeah, people have tried that, and it has backfired extensively, unwise. So Flat out, we cannot lose to time. Like we have been taught by time itself, thou shall not get bitch slapped by time. So we cannot lose it. Is there a technology to actually doing it? Like desire, good. How can you actually do it? Thankfully, there is this technology known as Rosetta Disk. I have made a detailed video 2 years ago. Now, the idea with this is that it's a direct storage of books, basically, or paper written things, so to say. So what they're going to do is directly put all the data into disk. How many disks? Depends on your design, depends on your requirement. How much can be poured into it? Well, whole Wikipedia in a disk this size, whole of it. And here's the interesting part. That is not that awesome part. The awesome part is it's human readable, meaning all you need is a microscope to read it. This is a very pure sheet of nickel, like very top grade as it can be, pure grade of nickel, and they just etch it. And we have developed so much advanced lithographic machine that we can etch things that can be read by using normal optical microscope. I'm not talking about electron microscope. The scale is up to you. Some designs, they do suggest to increase data that what if we require electron microscope. Some engineers said that that's good, but please make the schematics of electron microscope available in normal microscope. So, and that's why, like, this is a language archive. This apparently has around 300 language. Let that sink in. 300 language. And yes, that's Hindi, and it has many other Hindi language, Arab language, Mandarin language, way too many languages. And the idea is that whole of US in Declaration of Independence is translated in all that languages. So all those languages can be preserved in the future. And one of that copy is in Rosetta mission in space right now. So this is a very good technology, and these are pendants that you can buy right now. This is from Clock of the Long Now Foundation. You can buy the Rosetta Foundation. This is another interesting way of doing it, where it's like it's around 10,000 rupees, around $130. You can buy that. This is like, of course, depending on what you want to buy, either you can even put your own stuff. Like if you are a Hindu, you can buy Bhagavad Gita that is put in there. If you are Christian, you can buy whole Bible that is put in there. You can buy pi that is 200 digit or something like that. Why? This is a Leonardo da Vinci's all of his work put into that disk. Now these disks are very hard, very resilient, meaning a normal fire cannot destroy that. Like you have to actively go into something that is hotter than steel fire, meaning you have to try to destroy them. And the idea is that you're going to have hundreds of these things to ensure against survival against odds. So this is a known technology. We have figured it out, and more companies are looking into it. And this allows us to miniaturize and store it without ever worrying about it. And this is something that you can just put on the lunar surface, and you don't even have to worry about. The lunar surface does not get hot enough. Radiation does not have effect on them. It will just last for very long time. The nickel half-life is so long that it's like, bro, we good. At least for 1,000 years, we good. Unless something meteorite directly hits it, we good. So that's the idea of data storage. Now, will this store all the data of humanity? No, but more than enough of important data. More than enough. Whereas like patents, scientific documentation, we surprisingly do not have that much of that. Like you will think like, oh, we have 10,000 records. No, we just have 10,000 patents. The core technology is surprisingly simple. So a lot of humanity's data can be compacted and put into these disks. This could be put into moon, and forget about it. Just forget about it. Like, just don't worry about it. And we can keep this for thousands of years without too much hassle. So this is one way of storing data, and all you need to retrieve the data is just a basic microscope. So if you are on the moon, there is a good chance you have the technology needed for a microscope. Or maybe in the future, you just pull out your smartphone and just like, lol. So that's how we can store the data part of it. Then we come to the most important part of life, DNA. So DNA is what we classify as life essence. Like what is, the force, the soul, what is that? DNA. Other than that, nothing else fills the bill, so to say. So life essence is basically DNA. DNA is what's the difference between Mars and Earth. You take a lump of rock, put DNA into it, and DNA does its magic. Voila, Earth becomes Earth, Gaia. And it's the reason why we have food to us. Everything is running on DNA. So what is the most precious thing to basically planet Earth itself is DNA. That's the reason why we have oxygen atmosphere, not carbon dioxide atmosphere. So it's very important, from seeds to humans to animals to all of it. Like we really need to archive DNA very well and very long duration. So this is something that we really have to sort it out. Thankfully, there are certain things that are helping us. First, DNA is small, so we're good. It's very small. It's compact. Ultra good. We can pack a lot of it in very small volumes, and it likes cold temperature, meaning if you can put it in liquid nitrogen, they're good. You put liquid nitrogen in basically moon, especially in shadow, yeah, it ultra good. Actually, it's not that good because it will actually freeze up. Of course, depending on your design, you could desire basically solid liquid nitrogen. In those cases, you'll solid nitrogen. Why I'm saying solid liquid nitrogen? Solid nitrogen, nitrogen ice. You may be like, we good. Now, of course, will it be viable? Not really. I do not think that is possible, but it will be DNA data there. So in future, if we look extract this data again for 200 years, 500 years, whatever have you, we should have the technology to reconstruct something, but the source data would be the core part. Do we have the source? Then we can look at it. Even if it's damaged by basically nitrogen ice, it still would be the raw data, as in like what was the DNA. We should be able to. And heck the heck, we are trying to basically freeze dead bodies. So we should be good. At least the core data would be there, and we should have the technology that if we can assemble any anomalies, and of course if we're going to store multiple of it. So likelihood of, if all of them had some damage, it's unlikely that all the damage would be exactly the same place. So we can use basic reconstruction, and voila, long term, very long term. And Earth also had a lot of seed vaults. For example, this is a seed vault in the Doomsday Vault. This puppy, here's the interesting part. It has seeds from North Korea, and next to it was the USA also. So that's the funny part, is like everybody who has a brain cell, surprisingly, does understand we shall put our backups as many places as possible. This is India's backup. This is in Himalayan mountains, very cold place, meaning no electricity, nothing, still remains cold. So we're good. You put something in basically lunar shadow. Yeah, it goes to almost absolute zero. So we good, ultra good. Where there you have to work hard to heat it up. So in this sort of places, of course, global warming will make it bad. Global warming will make it bad, but it still should be in safe range. Moon would be like, bro, we good. So this is where we can store DNA for long term. This is not something that you're going to store there and pull it out, next month. For that, we have Earth vaults, and this has come into use, which is tragic and hopeful also. Tragic, we should not be needing this. Hopeful, that there was a seed bank in a nation, African nation, it got boomed, and the farmers ran out of seeds. Okay, then they went here, they pulled the seeds out, planted it, again new batch was created, everything was fine, and a small selection was created and sent it back here. Safekeeping. It has been used. Good, we have used it. Sad that we needed to use it. But again, every nation puts it, like be it India, be it USA, every nation has a setup where they are like keeping the seeds. And hopefully we should have at least, give or take, 400 seed banks. At least 200. I mean, like, come on, we have almost 195 countries. We should have at least that much. So DNA is very important for food, for security, for our health. We may not even know. Heck, maybe we keep evolving. Of course, mild evolving. We are no longer evolving in the same way in natural selection, but we are still evolving. Like, of course, our environment is affecting us. We may create a new disease without even understanding it. And heck, only if in future they will like, hey, do we have actual sample of what normal humans used to look like? Oh, this is what we have messed up. It is very important. And having actual source rather than a digital file, actual source, or this is what the DNA looks like, desirable. So storing data, storing DNA, that's sorted. That takes care of us in the long run. So what we can expect in the future? Well, this is the very interesting part. It can start small. Seeds are not very big. Even human, biological material or human seeds, they're not that big, and you can store surprisingly. They will not be viable, let that be very clear. I would be shocked if somebody figured out that technology where it's like, oh yeah, we are storing it in liquid nitrogen and it's still active, still works. I would be shocked. I would be genuinely shocked. In long term, not in short term. Short term is, it does work. Long term, as in 100 years, 200 years, I would be shocked. But should not be impossible, but that's the one thing. It can start, especially for data one. Data one, we can be like, hey, all the important documentation, you just put that into disk, put in multiple location on moon. It could be as small as like, a 1 ton box that we just drop it there. As long as we can drop it in shadow, we'll be sorted. If we drop it in the light side, we have to cover it with regolith basically. Of course, we do not need very thick, but we do need regolith. Be mindful, data side is immune to radiation. DNA is not. So for that reason, if we are not burying it very deep or not in a very shadowed place, we may desire to have lot of copies. So DNA does not get annihilated. It will be annihilated, but over time. And more copies we have, the more likelihood it will be that will survive in the long term. So that's one thing, and it can be done gradually. This is very desirable. You do not want an industry that only works if it's completely done. You want something that starts small so people can invest in it. Then they get the return. Then they're like, we can keep doing this. Then you have a full economy. That's awesome. And what do we need to actually build this quote-unquote library? Just a chamber. A chamber big enough where a human can walk in, pull something out, that's it, done. and it has to be in shade. That's the first requirement. Each da shall be in the shade. That's the only requirement. It must be in the shade. It cannot expose to, like, you can expose it to the sun, you can cover it and all that, but why? Like, you want passively safe structure, not actively safe. So passively safe means if nothing happens, then also is safe. So for that reason, you want it in shades. Or just like create a box, cover it with 1 meter thick, let's say, lunar soil. You're good, you're sorted. So that's one way of doing it. It does not even need vacuum, it does not need air pressure. That's desirable. And no temperature control. Fundamentally, it will keep going down in temperature, and if it's a very long duration, like nobody touches it, it may go down to almost absolute zero, especially in the shade. So that's desirable. And lava tubes, now that would be the starting part when we are building it, like going into some craters where it's like areas that are completely shadow. That would be starting point. Over time, we will go into lava tubes. Now we have detected some lava tubes that are huge. How huge? This is the image that is circulated to give you context of what kind of size we are talking about. That's 1 kilometer basically. This puppy is in kilometers, like kilometers. You can put whole cities inside. That's how huge it is. It's freaking huge. So these things are bonkers. So size is not an issue. If we actually start to have tourism there, actually starts to build a base there, actually starts even a basic archiving business, we can expand enough where we can go down and have take care of the tubes. Now, once we go into the tubes, now we are talking in very long term. Instead of 1,000 years, now we are talking 10,000 years, because here's the while lunar surface is getting bombarded, generally it's getting bombarded by small stuff. And unless you are ludicrously unlucky, no missile is directly gonna bam your data storage. So in those sort of scenarios, we do want to go deep in long term. And not to mention, for DNA storage, it may be desirable to go really deep, like at least 1 kilometer deep. Once we can do that 1 kilometer deep, radiation does not penetrate that deep. So even neutrinos will become so low, so attenuated, that we safe for very, very, very long time. And since the core is not molten anymore, core is not hot, core is not radiating that much energy, so it will be cold. It won't be absolute zero. For that, you need connection to the vacuum of the space, but it will be cold. So it is very good long-term strategy where it will be safe from radiation, it will be safe from lunar meteorites, and we'll like put it and forget it. And this will be something that we humans can do for further generation. It's not something that we're gonna do for like, oh, my grandkids can pull it out. Hopefully they won't need to. But again, if they need to, they should be able to do that. Assuming either the tourism brings the price down, which has happened. Like back in the day, going across the sea was like expensive thing. Now we don't even give it a, we just bitch about it that it takes 20 hours. So that's what we can do in the future, and it has like some financial incentive also, and useful thing for our future also. Really awesome stuff. So this was my presentation on using lunar as an archived storage, so to say. Hopefully you have liked it, learned from it. In that case, please click the like button, share it amongst a friend. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I urge you to press dislike, press it twice to show me your disappointment. Please leave a comment, because I do try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.